I came here to Healesville Sanctuary, which is a little over an hour drive east of Melbourne. And I came here to observe animals. There are a lot of native Australian animals here, including emu, including kangaroo, koala, and many others, Tasmanian devils, platypus, echidnas, dingoes, and many birds. So it's a beautiful summer day here, and it's Friday, so relatively quiet here. And I noticed, of course, whenever I travel, also it's an opportunity for me to observe humans, and almost like traveling gives me a front row to human behavior, and especially how we relate to experience itself. Something I notice again and again is this: many people don't seem able to simply have an experience. They need to show it, to share it, to frame it, to post it. Almost as if the experience does not fully exist, unless it is witnessed. A beautiful view, a meaningful meal, an unusual encounter, even a quiet moment, quickly becomes externalized content. It's a proof, and subconsciously it becomes a performance. And of course, this pattern does not stay in travel. It shows up in some other areas that I noticed, like even healing. It shows up in therapy. It shows up in spirituality, including being calm. For example, I've been working with a client online, so I work with her weekly on OCD, and I told her actually it's not a matter of behavioral alteration change. It's if you can stay calm, that will help. Now she turned staying calm itself into a performance, into something to measure from outside. So which brings me to today's question. Why is it so hard to embody an insight? Or said differently, why do we understand something deeply yet keep living as if we don't? So here's the uncomfortable answer. I'm speaking the word uncomfortable in this most gorgeous, amazing place. Because many of us unconsciously turn insight into another goal to achieve, another standard, another way to measure themselves. Thus, any insight, precious it may be, becomes another thing to practice, another standard to live up to, another way to be good, another way to advance themselves, another way to not fall behind. Our mind sometimes can instantly project any insight into future. It doesn't matter future 10 years from now or a few seconds into the future. Even calmness can become a performance in the example of my client. I stayed calm, I handled it well, I didn't react, I'm doing the work. No, nothing wrong with those statements. As a therapist, I hear them and I can tell something in the tone, either it is genuine feedback, an update, or underneath those statements, whether there is tension, like monitoring, like self-evaluating, like quiet fear of failing at healing. This is what I call toxicity in positivity. Now, there's nothing wrong with positivity. Positivity is not a problem. Awareness is not a problem. Insight is not a problem. The problem begins when our nervous system turns those things into requirements. When calmness becomes something, or insight becomes something you must maintain, when growth becomes something you must demonstrate, perform, when healing becomes something you must prove to yourself or to others, that's when life becomes conditional. How many times have you heard people say, I'm working on it? When they say I'm working on it, they're not embodying it. They are projecting it into a future as if the future they get better. Well, which, of course, the future does get better, but their mind is not in the moment. So at that point, we are no longer regulating, we are controlling. That's how we turn life, which is always inside out. Life itself is to be lived inside out. Then we turn that into a requirement, into controlling, and then we turn life into outside in. Controlling, it's always outside in. It's kind of backwards of life itself. When life is meant to be lived, is meant to be perfect in every moment, in its own way. And that's how we turn that into outside in, controlling. And this part of the answer is ironic, is delivered from the most gorgeous place ever. I came down here, drove down here to see 12 Apostles. That's very famous. But I discovered so many other lands and places just as pretty, or even more so. This is called the London Bridge. You see why. London Bridge has fallen down. So give an example of a client of mine. We had 10 sessions back in 2020, and I remember when the pandemic just started in March 2020, and 10 o'clock every Thursday morning, I had him coming to see me, and he was the only in-person client back then. And for me, we never really had a real shutdown, and the office was open. Most people chose not to come in person anymore. They don't even go out of their home, as advised by our government. And but I told him, as long as you want to be in person, I will show up. And the same goes to him. As long as you, Kemila, you don't mind coming to the office, I will show up. So 10 o'clock a.m. Thursday morning, for 10 weeks, I had one in-person client, and I also give me an opportunity to go to the office to water my plants once a week. Now, coincidentally, this client is from Australia. He now lives in BC. We work on how to induce some metaphysical experiences. He read many books, watched many videos. He was very fascinated about the spiritual world. So he wanted to use hypnosis to get a little contact his higher self, have some automatic writing, lucid dreaming, contact spirit guides kind of experience, and using hypnosis. Now, it's interesting how reading so much got in his head there's a right way to do it. So he always, this is an extremely kind, gentle soul, very hardworking, and he always wanted to do it right. And he took notes in our talk. He really wanted to get it. But ironically, the experiences he wanted is actually quite fluid. Then he wanted so hard to structure it up. So every every session he wanted homework, and he would come back to report to me how did it go. And of course, again I said, what you wanted, the experience is really just your personal experience. It's so personal that there's no right way to do it. Since there's no right way to do it, there's no wrong way to do it. I remember I said it over and over to him. And so it's like inside out experience. You do not want to regurgitate other people's experience. Everybody's spiritual experience is different. And it's what you want is to let what's inside out, the desire to have it. It's the desire does not come from the books you read. The books may have kind of resonated with something in you, but it's from you. It's like inside out experience. So that, the example of this client came to my mind as we're talking about living a life from inside out rather than outside in. And control, even it wears a peaceful mask, still comes out of fear. In my clinical work, I see this, especially in anxiety and OCD patterns. I see this very clearly. People are told to stay calm, to think positively, to breathe, to regulate, to ground, to reassure themselves. And people try very hard on that. But trying hard to stay calm is not calm. Monitoring peace is not peace. And performing relaxation is not relaxation. Calmness, peace, and relaxation is not something you do. It's something that happens when the nervous system feels unthreatened, start to feel a sense of safety. So that's why insight alone doesn't really normally create real change. Sometimes it does, but more than half of the time it doesn't, because insight belongs to the thinking mind, and embodiment belongs to the nervous system. So when your nervous system starts to be engaged, you start to feel unthreatened and safe, then you are living it rather than understanding it, thinking about it. So the nervous system does not respond to outside in instructions. It does respond to inside out feeling of safety. This is also why reassurance, when it's not tuned in, doesn't work. When I say not tuned in, I mean you're not on the same page with the person you are trying to reassure with. So today I am in this Californian redwood forest in Warburton, Victoria, Australia. So how did the Californian redwood end up here as a forest? I don't know. They planted here obviously because they look so straight lines everywhere you look, and it's so beautiful, stunning, like so tall, like cinematic cathedral tower like. But yesterday I was on a tram. I was taking the tram in Melbourne to go to Queen Victoria Market. And so when I got on the tram, I saw a available seat by the window. So I went and took it. Within seconds, I felt this wetness on my skirt. And of course, I immediately got up, and it was wet, really wet. So I was quite uncomfortable, not knowing what it was. So my partner, being so kind, and he stood up, and we were standing in the tram, and to try to ease my discomfort, he told me, I am sure it was probably just water. Now that reassurance, did it work? Actually not, because even though he said it was probably water, I knew he didn't know what it was, and I didn't know. And so, still not knowing, what actually in that moment helped me to ease my discomfort was another thought. So I was thinking, after I, visited the market, and I would go home and go to where I was staying, and shower and change and laundry immediately. So that actually thought helped me, knowing I was going to do that. And so before that, I just needed to finish what I was doing, and and that was okay. So I call those kind of moments tolerated ambiguity, because we don't know what it was. And so saying, I'm sure it's water, that thought didn't help in that moment, that kind of reassurance. So reassurance, they sound kind, they look kind, but it subtly tells the system, you're only okay when I tell you this. You're only okay when it's this condition. And so it becomes more conditional. Whilst when I say tolerated ambiguity, I don't know what it is, but I will be okay now. It's more unconditional. So it's the same as, in the same way, forced positivity also tells the system, you're only okay when I tell you this. In this case, of course, when I tell you this is water. What happens then if we cannot stay positive? Or what happens when positivity fades or slips? Then there will be more pressure, there will be more self-judgment, there will be more trying harder, there will be more performance. Now, we have to take the kindness from the person who tried to reassure us and perform for them. That's what happens. Today is February 16th, 2026. It's actually a New Year's Eve of the Spring Festival, or Chinese New Year. Some people like to call that the Lunar New Year. It's a year of horse that's coming tomorrow. So instead of celebrating it in a Chinese way, since I'm in Australia, so I'm doing it in a Australian way. We're having a one tasting tour. So this is a Sauvignon Blanc, and this is a Shiraz, and cheers for the Chinese New Year. That's what we do wherever you are. You do what you do in that region. Anyway, true regulation, not performance-based regulation, is quieter than what we make it to be. It often is actually quite invisible because it's inner work, and it doesn't announce itself as this is true inner work. That's why it can feel unsettling at first, because there's no immediate validation from outside. There's no immediate applause for that. So when someone really embodies the insight, rather than having the insight as a knowledge in their head, when they embody it, when they live it, they stop needing to say that they have it. When someone is truly calm, they don't need to measure it anymore. On the scale of calmness, where am I? That's a true calmness. It's there. It's felt calm sense. Now, when someone is genuinely present, they don't need to broadcast it. The presence comes through everything they say, everything they do, or nothing they say, nothing they do. It's there. So the inner space is what matters, even though nobody can see it from outside, but you can feel it. It's quite intimate. It's intimately felt. That's actually worth everything, even though it doesn't appear that way from outside. I'm standing here together with all of these gigantic standing stones and this place. And Australia has so many surprises for us to discover. This place is called Hanging Rock Park. Most stones are standing here, and there's one huge rock that is just hanging there, and so unique that got its name for this place. It's said that this place, it's very different from even the surrounding area. It's because of millions of years ago. I don't know if it was 6 million or 600 million, but it's long ago, even though scientists say it's still relatively young. There was a huge volcanic eruption, and even though these stones, they don't look like a lava stone. Earlier today, I visited another national park, the organ pipes. Yes, thank you. Organ pipes park, and another very unique setting. And those stones look like a lava flow. But here, I think what they said is when a volcano erupted, and they just sent, they're so powerful, sent all the stones up to the earth, up to the sky, and then they come down, become these stones millions of years ago. And what a privilege to be here. Back to our subject. It doesn't mean that we never share our joy or our progress. We can just notice why we share. Is it expression, or is it validation? Is it connection, out of connection, or is it out of reassurance? Is it they share out of joy of sharing, or is it a proof that I'm doing it right? Now, I think at times I notice I can be guilty of that, sharing on a social media, for example. I normally would have to pause and ask myself, out of what am I sharing? Validation, seeking validation, or my true expression? Working on that. So these are not moral questions. They are diagnostic ones. In hypnotherapy, at least the one I practice, this is why we do not aim for performance-based cures or healing or goals. We don't aim for never anxious again, or always calm, or doing it right. We aim for choices, moment by moment by moment choices. We aim for flexibility, for ability to let an experience pass without turning it into just another emergency or an achievement measure. In other words, it's not linear, the progress or the growth. It's in the moment of choice. As when that happens, calmness emerges on its own, without putting that calmness as another goal, not as a badge we wear, or not as an identity we claim, but as something, not as something that's so fragile that it always has to be protected. It's just a state that comes and goes, which is in the end what real freedom feels like.